Hi again, everyone, and welcome to Badger Breakdown. I'm Mike Lucas for UWBadgers.com. I'm joined by the voice of the Badgers, Matt Lepay. Who would have thought that Penn State would have been able to author this type of story 6 months ago? And look where the Nittany Lions are today, and you know it's going to be a raucous stadium awaiting the Badgers.
Yeah, I would not have been one of those who thought that. Talking with Brett Bielema this week, though, he isn't. You wonder with Penn State if it's going to be more of a long-term effect. 4 years of probation. Players are still eligible to transfer up through next summer and play immediately, but as he says, that there's a lot of good players there. But I'm surprised. I didn't see Penn State being in this position right now, especially after the first couple games where the offense in particular looked real shaky, and it's turned out to be really good.
Well, that's very, very true, because after losing their first 2 games in the manner in which they lost to a MAC team and then by 1 point missing 4 or 5 field goals, you figure that the sky was falling.
Yeah.
And then they were able to turn around, and you have to give so much credit, not only the players, because they deserve most of it, but Bill O'Brien and what he's been able to manage there.
Yeah, stayed with it. First off, found out that Ohio, out of the Mid-American Conference, is a pretty good team.
Yes.
They've put together a very nice season, but what Bill O'Brien and his guys have been able to do in developing Matt McGloin, getting the running game going, and Allen Robinson, who has set a Penn State record for receptions in a season. You're looking at a guy with more than 70 catches this year, a lot of touchdowns. Nothing overly fancy, but they've changed some things around probably a little bit from what they used to do under Joe Paterno and his staff. But to see a team be balanced and have that passing attack in particular that Penn State has surprised a lot of people.
What you see is their belief in a plan, O'Brien's plan. And I've made this reference a few times. I don't know if it's fair or accurate, but what I've seen in McGloin is kind of Scott Tolzien, someone who's been in the program for a long time and then finally has gotten his opportunity. And once he did, he's taken advantage of it.
Yeah, and probably a lot like Tolzien, you look at Matt McGloin, and there's nothing physically imposing when you watch him out there, but he's just like Scott. McGloin's really, really good and makes good decisions. And there seems to be a pretty good mesh between him and Bill O'Brien. Defensively, you figured they had a chance to be pretty good, but you go back to McGloin's development, and you know the running backs that they throw at you, again, nothing real fancy there. They line up, they stay square, and then they just run right at you and sometimes right through you. But McGloin in particular, his jump, and as Brett was saying earlier this week, from game 1 to game now, forget about last year to this year, September to where McGloin is now has been pretty impressive.
And for most of the season, they've played the vintage type defense that we've grown accustomed to with Penn State. They've rallied around their 2 linebackers, Montee and Hodges. Now, Montee's injury last week clouds that a little bit, but they've always been a hard-nosed defensive team, and that hasn't changed.
Yeah, Carson in there, real solid linebacker as well. Hall can play, can back up at any of the spots, so he's ready. You know, with Montee's situation. Jordan Hill inside, number 47.
Big-time defensive tackle.
Yeah, again, it seems like a weekly occurrence. We're talking about this in the Big Ten with Wisconsin going up against really good defensive tackles. Number 47 is a guy to watch. Hill for Penn State. So the secondary, a lot of new starters, but guys who have played in the past. The role's different, but they've had to make changes because of graduation in that secondary, and it seems like that's come along pretty well.
When I was looking at their stats this morning, one thing just really stood out, and I couldn't believe the disparity. First quarter scores, Penn State 90, opponent 6.
Yeah.
Is that, you think that people take them lightly going into the game?
Maybe at some point they did.
Wow.
If they did, it's a mistake. You know, it's just they get the jump on people. And actually, in the game last week against Indiana, they did not get off to a great start offensively, but then they got it rolling. The atmosphere, I think, to me, Mike, is going to be interesting again for Wisconsin, because you look around the league and there are storied stadiums. I'm not sure there's a louder one. In fact, I don't think there is a louder one than going into Beaver Stadium and State College. And this being the last game, you know, Thanksgiving weekend, I don't know if it's going to be a factor or not, but knowing it's Penn State's last game, if every seat is occupied or not, it's going to be a very, very loud venue for Wisconsin to have to contend with.
Let me throw out another number, 16. I think you know where I'm going with that. 16 points combined margin of defeat for Wisconsin at 4 games. So can the Badgers bounce back again? Can they show their resiliency on the road this time? In that environment you just spoke to.
Yeah, until they don't do it, I don't see why I would think that they would struggle, because the bad news is they've had to bounce back from really gut-wrenching losses the last couple of years. But in every occasion the following week, you're going to get Wisconsin's best shot. Now, does that guarantee that Wisconsin's going to win? Absolutely not. But I don't see this team rolling over. I don't see this team hitting that emotional wall. I just think, you know, they're human. They've got to be hurting after a game like Ohio State, but there's still, it's different than the NFL, Mike. There's still a lot out there for Wisconsin. We know the Rose Bowl is there, but if it isn't the Rose Bowl, you're still playing for as attractive a bowl game as you possibly can, and I think that's where Brett, without saying it, probably where he's coming from. If you're healthy, you play. This isn't the NFL. When in doubt, hold them out. You know, we'll see with a couple guys who are nicked up, but otherwise, this is a little different deal than pro football.
And you want to use this as a springboard to Indianapolis, don't you? You want to make sure you have some momentum, because you're working on your confidence here too. If it comes down to being a close game, you want to be able to win them.
They just missed winning what would have been a big-time statement game.
Absolutely.
Here's another chance for it. They're going to have some more opportunities, but if they can go into Penn State, get a win there, then I think people look at Wisconsin quite a bit differently heading down to Indianapolis.
Final thought on Montee Ball. I mean, 2 games stand out to me during the length of his career. One was against Northwestern a couple of years ago, where he looked like he was at a different speed than everybody else on the field here at Camp Randall. And I felt the same way on Saturday against Ohio State. His quickness, his explosiveness, I thought separated him.
191 yards and 39 carries, and you know, just that close to breaking the record for touchdowns. But yeah, these last few games, you know, he's played really, really well. You looked at Indiana and people said, okay, yeah, it's against a rush defense that struggled. But to see him do what he did in the game against Ohio State, that shows that his improvement and the offensive line's improvement, tight ends, etc., has been real.
Who knows? Maybe there's still New York City in his future, right?
This thing's so wide open right now, it would be probably foolish to dismiss him if he can have a big game
if
here.
The Badgers win.
If they win, which obviously means a lot to Heisman voters.
No question. For Matt Lepay, I'm Mike Lucas. Thanks for watching Badger Breakdown on UWBadgers.com.